our fantasy fights, weekly rankings are out. These are some players that JJ and Keoni are going to fight over because they have a difference of opinion. So the first one we have up is Rhamondre Stevenson. JJ is high on him. He has him at 15 and Keoni has him at 26. So
round one, fight.
So I get that Rhamondre Stevenson has felt like a disappointment this season. If you drafted him, you drafted him pretty high, probably second round, hope maybe the third if you were lucky. But hopefully you haven't given up on him yet. Look, the last 2 weeks he's been a top 15 running back. That's where I have him again, top 15. Nothing explosive, but just getting the job done. He's not seeing the rush attempts that he was earlier in the season that were making him a top 20 running back, where, you know, he was finishing 20, 21. But he's seeing a ton of targets lately. 6 targets each of the last 2 weeks, 5 catches, 6 catches. He's also still out touching Zeke in the red zone, though Zeke is eating into that. It's just them two, so it's going to be one of the two. Rhamondre is getting on first down. He's not getting the job done, getting into the end zone as much as I'd like him to, but he's still getting the opportunities there, so you got to give him that. And he's also seeing 10% of the red zone targets for the team. At the running back position, that's a pretty high number. I think Stevenson can get in the end zone against a Miami Dolphins team that you need to score against, and so I have Stevenson at 15.
So, yeah, I mean, it could, like, I do agree that it might be a little low for him this week, but that's because this week 8 has now reopened the floodgates with no teams on bye. So all the players, you know, that have been missing or have been gone the past 2 weeks, everybody's now in the pool and fighting for, you know, top fantasy rights. So much more opportunities for other running backs to sneak ahead of him, push him back in line, and including, you know, Ezekiel Elliott. Not that Ezekiel Elliott is going to be ahead of him. I do not have Zeke ranked ahead of Rhamondre Stevenson. But he is, you know, kind of eating a little bit into his amount of touches and the workload that he's getting. You know, Zeke had his 3rd most touches of the season last week, and I think they will continue to kind of share the load against Miami. The Patriots might also have to abandon the run at some point in this game, depending on which Miami offense decides to show up. You know, like, because easily Miami could drop, you know, a ton of points on the Patriots and then just be like, all right, it's going to be a Mac Jones to Kendrick Bourne type of day.
But that feeds right
probably
into
Bailey
Rhamondre
Zappi.
Stevenson.
No. They're trying to come back, and it's just not worth it to go, you know, to the running back at that point. And I agree, he does get a lot of passing down, which is very nice for a running back. You know, and he does get the majority of the carries. But the reason I think it's more of one of like the ranking things where it's just like, oh, somebody else ahead of him, and then just that's why he just fell so far. It's because there's a lot of people. You know, I got guys ahead of him, like a returning Derrick Henry from a bye week. You know, I have Dameon Pierce ahead of him versus a bad Carolina defense. Hot Deontay Foreman versus the Chargers. Even Gus Edwards versus Arizona. Those are just to name a few. I think I have those guys slightly ahead of him. That just push him out of the top 24 for me.
Let's move on to the second fight. In this one, we have, once again, Keoni versus JJ. For this one is DJ Moore. Keoni has him ranked 9 this week, and JJ has him at 20.
Round 2, fight.
Okay, so here's a guy who didn't have a touchdown last week, but I still ranked him pretty high. I know Tyler Bagent number 9 had a kind of very Hollywood script type of game last week versus the Raiders. But lo and behold, he faces an even better matchup versus the Chargers, who rank last versus the wide receiver position. They are the only team in the NFL who is averaging over 300 passing yards allowed per game, with the next closest team being 35 yards less per game on average. They are also tied for the most touchdowns allowed to the receiver with 9 on this season. Now, the Chargers can attack you up front. They have a pretty good line. Khalil Mack is great and all that sort of stuff, but they are vulnerable over the top. You know, much like Sylvester Stallone, they're taking you over the top. And we all know how they love keeping teams in games and finding ways to lose. It's almost, you know, a parody of itself at this point. I think DJ Moore is too good of a wide receiver to not take advantage of this secondary. And I think Tyler Bagent will be looking for him often. DJ Moore has had at least 8 targets in each of the last 4 games and 17 in the past 2 where Bagent has played. He had 9 in the last game where Bagent played the whole game. So that's a really good number. Like it didn't drop. So that's a good look. And good for his chances. I think he can overcome any troubles that Bagent has in this game, which that may come to it. But I think he will finish with a good amount of yards and likely find himself in the end zone in this game. I just think DJ Moore is too good of a player on this Chargers team that likes to give, you know, other good players opportunities and fantasy points.
I feel you. DJ Moore is really good. This has nothing to do with him. It's more to do with Bagent, and I don't think he's really that good of a quarterback. It's easy to win whenever you're winning, but I mean, who knows if they actually win this game. I just think it's going to be maybe a closer game, a 17-10 game, 13-10 game, where yes, the Chargers still choke at the end, but doesn't lead to a lot of fantasy production. You're counting on DJ Moore to get in the end zone pretty much, because even with 9 targets, 8 receptions, he's still finishing as the wide receiver 21 last week with Bagent. The week before, 8 targets. Amazing. This guy is getting all the targets, wide receiver 35. If he doesn't get in the end zone, he's not finishing inside the top 20. And I just don't know if he's the guy that gets in the end zone. It could be a Cole Kmet type week. It could be a Foreman week again. Broshawn Johnson sneaks in the end zone maybe. You never know. I'm just not betting that he gets in the end zone no matter what. I get it. The Chargers are the team that you can probably bet on him to get in the end zone. I'm just not doing it this week.